So just wrapping up this conversation then, Mohammed, as we look ahead to the next edition, whether that be in 2 years, 4 years, whenever it may be. We know Al Ahly have qualified for that tournament, but if Asian teams are to compete at this level across the board and not just the Saudi ones, what more do you think needs to be done to be able to do that and not leave with regrets that perhaps a couple of clubs are doing?
Well, I mean, the question of quality is always going to be a problem. And then the reality is, right now, the top four Saudi clubs and the types of players they have, even though Japanese, Korean, and different clubs from across East Asia can compete with them, even we saw with Al Ain and everything. But I think we still need a bit more data Asia wise to see if the UAE, Qatari, Korean, Chinese, Australian, Japanese clubs can compete with them on one games. Are we going to see again a 75% or even 100% Saudi League? No, you can't be 100%. So 75% Saudi League semifinals this year, or is that not going to be the case? So the reality is, you look at it from a quality perspective, but then you look at games like Ulsan Fluminense, Urawa, and Inter Milan. You think, okay, they can do one or two games where they actually push to their limits. But then you look at Al Ain, who were by far and away the best team in 2023, 2024, and they just absolutely didn't do anything. Like just didn't even put up a fight. So one thing is obviously taking it as seriously as you can, whether it's in terms of mentality, whether it's in terms of fitness, whether it's in terms of signings, maybe even placing a bit more priority onto it as compared to continental and domestic competitions. Because I do feel like even when it came to Al Hilal, it's like you knew and you literally signed Neymar for the Club World Cup last season, right? So then suddenly you didn't bring any signings in the special transfer window they made, and you even mentioned like they could have strengthened other clubs, but they didn't. So it's important to strengthen, but also to look at it like to actually analyze what is the difference, what makes European clubs so high quality, like what makes Bayern Munich Bayern, and what makes Al Hilal Al Hilal, right? It's not just player quality on the pitch. It could be the way they train. It could be the way that they come into games. It could be the professionalism. So just looking at the differences in Asian and European football culture, of course, is another important one. But really, how could you come? The real answer is money, right? And hopefully, the increased AFC Champions League money will help. But I mean, the exponential difference between what European clubs get in the UEFA Champions League TV rights and the Club World Cup compared to Asian clubs will never keep up with it, which is why Saudi clubs, simply because of private investment, are able to actually, or even government investment, are able to actually compete, and still not yet. Still not as a league. I mean, you mentioned there's one point I wanted to mention about the league. Urawa have less league titles than Champions League titles, correct? It's like, yeah. So it shows you how hard the J League is. And the J League, when I try to compare leagues, let's say first from each league, second, third, all the way down to the bottom, I think J League would beat the Saudi League, right? Same thing as I mentioned with the Brazilian League and other leagues. But strengthening the league is great, but really it's all about who your best team is. And Saudi, I think what they've understood from Europe is, I mean, in the end, is La Liga the strongest league in the world? If you look at the rest of the 17 teams, no, but they have Real Madrid and Barcelona. And that is La Liga. When you say La Liga, it is synonymous with Real Madrid and Barcelona. When people say I watch La Liga, it mostly means I watch Real Madrid games and I watch Barcelona games. So that's the model that Saudi has. Meanwhile, Japan is more similar to Brazil. You've got 10 quality teams, 10 teams that could win the title each season, but you don't have a super team that's going to be able to really compete and represent. Maybe that module, maybe Asian nations around will start to follow that module. You never know. But I think that that's something that big nations around the world are doing, Saudi are doing, kind of feel like Qatar and UAE are going to do the same. And let's see what we can see in East Asia. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point because I think it comes back so much to what you're wanting to achieve out of your domestic football and what your priorities are. Because you're absolutely spot on with Japan. The J League doesn't have a dominant few clubs. They've got big clubs. Urawa is a big club, Gamba Osaka, Kashima, but they're not always successful. They're not the two or three teams that are always at the top. We've seen Gamba relegated. We've seen Urawa flirt with relegation. Kashima have dropped back to the pack. There's such a yo-yo effect. There are teams that have come up from J2 and won J1 the next year, which is almost unheard of in so many leagues around the world. So they have such a depth of talent. And I think the other thing that hurts them at the moment, there's so many things, and um, so many of their best young players are now leaving to go abroad at a much younger age. So the best Japanese players are now always they're going overseas. But probably the second tier of Japanese players are also going overseas. So the J League is being held together by probably the third string and some really good emerging talent, but they will always then look to go away. So you don't have the best Japanese talent like you do the best Saudi talent. And it's the same in Brazil. The best talent is always going to go to Europe. The best Japanese talent is going overseas. So I think that the stat was Urawa was the only team at this Club World Cup that didn't have an international player or a current international player on their books. I think that's sort of representative of where the J League is at. And Scott has spoken about this in the past as well. Is that J League teams are sort of turning away from foreign players as well. You know, most teams are sort of putting out 11s that feature 9 Japanese players and 2 foreigners, whereas so many of the other teams across the continent that are having success in Saudi, you look at like JDT, Buriram, it's built on the back of increased numbers of foreigners. Now, that's great for Japanese football because it's building up a depth of talent that is serving the national team well and serving Japanese football well. But on a stage like this, it's not necessarily serving the J League well in this instance. But what's your preference? Is it to have a strong league and a strong national team because that's what you're feeding, or is it to be able to have teams that can compete on this level? Yeah, it's a really interesting debate about priorities, about investment, where that investment goes. We could discuss it ad nauseum. We could discuss it for a lot longer than what we have. But yeah, it's really fascinating. Be interested to see which way sort of teams look to invest in the future with this in mind. Because I think now that we've seen this tournament in reality, I think a lot of clubs will be tantalized by the prospect of playing there, and perhaps we'll see some clubs that actually, we really want to play this. We're going to invest to make sure we get there. It's going to be really interesting to see.